Hey everyone! A jaw-dropping secret has just been unveiled by Pope Francis's only living sister, Maria Elena Bergoglio. In a rare moment of breaking her silence, she's sharing untold stories about her famous brother, from their humble childhood, his unshakable faith, to the quiet sacrifices behind the Vatican's spotlight. These revelations are not only shocking the world, but also shedding light on the controversial rumors about the Pope's past. Dive into this emotional journey with us. Before we dive in, I need you to drop A in the comments if you're ready to uncover the untold truth about the Pope's life. And trust me, you'll want to smash that like button and subscribe with notifications on, because you won't believe what's coming next. Let's get curious together. Hit play, and let's unravel this mystery. In the upcoming memoir of Pope Francis, a surprising revelation has captured global attention as he shares that he was once the target of a suicide bombing during his visit to Iraq. Thankfully, he was saved by a piece of confidential intelligence from British intelligence. However, this disclosure is just the tip of the iceberg. Maria Elena, Pope Francis's only surviving sister, after more than a decade of living in seclusion, has broken her silence, sharing untold stories about their family, as well as secrets that could shake the very foundations of the Catholic Church. Maria Elena, the sister of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, better known as Pope Francis, has lived in seclusion for over 10 years, staying away from the media spotlight. However, after her brother's passing on April 21, 2025, she decided to speak out. In an emotional interview, Maria Elena revealed that Pope Francis had chosen silence on many sensitive issues within the Church, fearing that revealing the truth could lead to catastrophic consequences for the entire institution. She shared that despite her brother being a highly influential figure, to her, he was still Jorge, the boy who used to chase dogs in the yard and the one who always comforted her in tough times. Her statement left the listeners deep in thought. "I never wanted him to become the Pope." Maria Elena not only stunned everyone with this revelation, but her words also raised numerous questions about the price paid for Pope Francis's decisions. Why, after all these years of silence, did Maria Elena choose to speak out immediately after her brother's death? These questions led global media to dig deeper into the story, searching for clues that had never been revealed before. Maria Elena affirmed that what she would continue to disclose would shake the world, offering a glimpse into the private life of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, a world that few had ever known. Maria Elena, born in 1948 and 12 years younger than Pope Francis, shared memories of their childhood in Buenos Aires, where their family lived in an Italian immigrant neighborhood. Their father was a railroad worker, while their mother was a virtuous homemaker. Maria Elena recalls Jorge as a strong brother, someone who avoided attention and often ventured alone into poor neighborhoods to help those in need. These stories not only reflect a part of the Pope's family life, but also offer deep insight into the significant decisions he made throughout his life. As Jorge joined the Jesuits and quickly rose through the ranks, the distance between him and his family, especially with Maria Elena, grew. When Jorge became Pope, their family relationship was no longer measured by miles, but by the strict rituals of the Vatican. Meanwhile, Maria Elena struggled with illness, living quietly in a convent on the outskirts, cared for by nuns. She had long withdrawn from public life, merely a shadow on the fringes of a global icon. When Pope Francis passed away, Maria Elena was unable to travel to Rome to say goodbye, was excluded from the funeral, and her name was not even mentioned in the official farewell. Yet it is this silence that speaks volumes, reminding the world that behind the saintly halo, there was still a brother, a son, a flesh and blood man. Once Jorge, the boy from a family of 5 siblings. Jorge, born in 1936 to an Italian immigrant family, had to study and work from a young age to help support his family. Maria Elena recalls that as a child, Jorge was never one to speak much, but he was fiercely protective of his family. He always carried with him a sense of bearing the weight of the world. Before coming to the Vatican, before he even knew God, it was their grandmother Rosa who first lit the flame within Jorge. Rosa was a strict, devout woman with a heart burning for justice. According to Maria Elena, it was Rosa who ignited the compassion and remorse that would define Jorge's path. Maria Elena goes on to recount a childhood trauma that Jorge carried with him throughout his life. At around the age of 12, Jorge discovered that his father had a second family, a secret kept hidden for many years. Maria Elena does not reveal names or details about the event, but she affirms that from that moment, Jorge's childhood ended. The innocence he once had was lost, and from that point on, Jorge lived as though he were trying to atone for the sins of others. Maria Elena says that Jorge did not become a priest because he felt a divine calling, but because he wanted to escape a profound shame. She coldly admits that Jorge ran away from the pain of his past. Despite this, Jorge continued his religious path, and in 1969, he was ordained a Jesuit priest. However, his journey was unlike others. At the age of 36, just 4 years after his ordination, he became the provincial superior of the Jesuit order in Argentina, a significant role in the context of the country's political instability. In 1992, Jorge was appointed auxiliary bishop of Buenos Aires and quickly became archbishop. Yet despite his high rank, he lived simply, avoiding luxury cars, cooking for himself, visiting the sick and the poor, and dedicating time to those with AIDS, people whom society had abandoned. When the cardinals gathered in 2013 to elect a successor to Benedict, few believed that Jorge would be chosen. At 76, he was not a strong contender, but as the church faced a crisis, they sought change, and Jorge Mario Bergoglio became that choice. When he stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the world fell silent. Maria Elena recalls that moment and admits she only hoped they wouldn't choose him. But not because he wasn't deserving, rather because she feared the immense burden he would have to bear. It was the concern of a sister who had seen both the light and the darkness within Jorge. Some believe that it was Jorge's troubled past that prepared him to become the Pope. He had experienced failure, scandals, and painful silences. These experiences allowed him to understand the suffering of others and led him to lead the church with deep empathy. However, it was a challenging path, one that only those truly resilient could walk. Perhaps this is why Jorge Mario Bergoglio, before becoming Pope Francis, did not try to hide his scars. He faced them, and Maria Elena was there to witness this process. Jorge was not a perfect saint, but a man who had fallen and chose to rise again, moving forward with kindness. Maria Elena never left Buenos Aires, living simply, tending to her garden, and praying daily. Although she lived in seclusion and never sought attention, the memories of her brother that she held in her heart were ones that no one else could truly understand. Throughout Jorge's journey into religious life, Maria Elena remained in the ordinary world of Buenos Aires. Although their paths had diverged, Maria Elena never felt distant from Jorge until 2013, when he became Pope Francis. From that moment, everything changed. When asked if she felt hurt by not being able to be with her brother during those historic moments, Maria Elena responded with a sad smile. "He belongs to this world now. He no longer belongs to me." She said that although she accepted this, she never stopped missing her brother. It wasn't jealousy, but a deep sorrow as the last member of their family became a symbol, while the one left behind was forgotten. When Maria Elena uncovered the secrets of Jorge's life, the world was forced to look inward. Was the humility and compassion that Pope Francis was praised for truly just a moral virtue, or was it a form of atonement? Maria Elena once again stunned the world when she revealed that the Church never wanted her to speak of these things. "What could be more terrifying than everything that has already been revealed?" she whispered in fear. And what she was about to share could forever alter the history of the Catholic Church. According to Maria Elena, Pope Francis believed that there were truths the world was not ready to face. He didn't keep these secrets because they were evil, but because they could shatter everything that the faithful held dear. Before his death, he secretly compiled a collection of documents, letters, and recordings that he called Il Dossier Nascosto, the hidden dossier. Maria Elena revealed that even Jorge's closest advisors didn't know the full contents of this dossier. She disclosed that she had kept this secret for over a decade, guarding it as a sacred promise to her brother. In 2012, when Jorge was still Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he met Maria Elena at their mother's house and handed her a key along with a sealed envelope. He didn't explain much, only saying, "If the Church falls into crisis, I will know what to do." Although at that time Maria Elena didn't know her brother would become the Pope, she kept the envelope in a small wooden box, never opening it for fear of hurting him. She only knew that Jorge was carrying a tremendous burden. Maria Elena's revelations not only shocked the Catholic community, but also made the entire world pause and reflect. The hidden dossier that Jorge kept secret could contain truths about corruption, abuse, and cover-ups that have rocked the Vatican. Is this the truth that Pope Francis spent his life trying to conceal? These secrets could completely change the way the world views the Pope, who has been praised for his humility and compassion. On the morning Pope Francis passed away, Maria Elena felt a deep unease she had never experienced before. Torn between grief and responsibility, she decided to open the envelope her brother had entrusted to her many years earlier. What she found nearly caused her to collapse. A 3-page letter, written in black ink, with shaky handwriting as if Jorge had written it under extreme pressure. In this letter, Jorge confessed that he had uncovered a vast financial corruption network within the Vatican, involving illegal dealings with international banks and authoritarian regimes, which he described as the abuse of high-level power. Jorge wrote that, although he wanted to reveal the truth, he feared that doing so would cause the Church to collapse and destroy the faith of billions. The letter did not name specific individuals, but left behind cryptic clues, bank account numbers, initials of certain cardinals, and documents about contracts signed in the shadows. Jorge wrote that the key to a safe hidden beneath the Vatican, where the original documents that could prove everything were stored, was in his possession. "I don't know if I have the courage to open that door," Jorge confessed in the letter. However, Maria Elena knew that her brother's silence was not complicity, but a sacrifice, as he wanted to protect the Church, even if it shattered him in the process. After reading the letter, Maria Elena couldn't stop crying, realizing that her brother had lived a quiet battle between the weight of his leadership responsibility and his fear of the consequences. In their final conversation before leaving Argentina, Jorge shared with Maria Elena stories he had heard from Jesuit priests about hidden rooms beneath the Vatican, where sensitive information had been kept for centuries. Jorge never explained how he discovered the safe, but Maria Elena suspected that he learned about it when accessing internal documents after becoming pope. What was most shocking was that, despite knowing the truth, Jorge chose silence, not out of complicity, but because he believed that a global scandal would destroy the faith of millions. He opted for quiet reform, changing from within. But according to Maria Elena, in his final years, Jorge began to regret that choice. Perhaps the church needs to be completely broken down in order to rebuild it honestly, Jorge said to Maria Elena in his last days. Maria Elena revealed that in the weeks before his death, Jorge had attempted to arrange for the release of his secret dossier after his passing. However, the dossier disappeared from its storage location. Vatican officials not only denied the existence of the dossier, but also refused to acknowledge anything related to it. Despite this, Maria Elena remained adamant that they knew the dossier was real and that they feared what it contained. What leaves everyone questioning is what could be inside this dossier, so threatening that even a pope was afraid to disclose it. According to Maria Elena, Jorge spent years investigating what he called silent tragedies, cases of abuse and mistreatment in remote areas where cries for help were swallowed by the silence of the victims. Most of the victims were children from developing countries, not only forgotten by the world, but also abandoned by the church, which was supposed to protect them. Jorge once told Maria Elena about an unrecorded data cache containing cases buried by bishops' orders, payments made for silence, and priests quietly reassigned instead of being held accountable. Despite Jorge's efforts to reopen some of these cases, he always faced resistance from higher-ups in the church. With the last of his strength, Pope Francis handed Maria Elena a small wooden rosary. While it held no material value, no gold or jewels, it had a special significance to him. Jorge explained that it belonged to a boy in Argentina who had come to the church seeking help but was turned away. A week later, the boy passed away. Jorge had kept that rosary for decades, as a bitter reminder of how silence can sometimes cost a life. Maria Elena stated that the rosary was not only a keepsake, but her brother's final testament. That was why she could no longer remain silent. However, what hurt her even more was that the Vatican had refused to acknowledge anything about the promise Jorge had made on his deathbed. There was only silence, a silence that seemed almost deliberate, as if there were a conspiracy behind the succession of Pope Francis. If Jorge's story touches your heart, don't forget to share your thoughts and hit like on this video. Let us know how you feel about his legacy of love and humility. As the bells rang throughout the Vatican and the white smoke rose to signal a new era, the world celebrated the arrival of a new pope. However, few knew that this succession had been arranged in advance, as Maria Elena revealed. Jorge had once confided in her about his deep concerns regarding who would succeed him. It wasn't due to theological disagreements, but because of a silent agreement he believed had been signed by powerful forces within the Roman Curia. One night, Jorge whispered to his sister, "They've already chosen him." When Maria Elena, shocked, asked, "Who are they, and why must you remain silent with them?" Jorge simply sighed and mentioned a name: Cardinal Matteo Teresco. According to Jorge, Cardinal Matteo Teresco was the one chosen by the powerful factions within the Vatican to succeed him. Despite his polite and charming exterior, the cardinal concealed a much darker secret. Jorge told Maria Elena that he had discovered a letter in which Cardinal Terresco allegedly promised these power groups that, if elected pope, he would not delve into the unreleased files, particularly those related to abuse cases in South America, Africa, and Eastern Europe. These were the very files Pope Francis had spent years trying to investigate, only to be blocked time and again by a system too vast and fearful of the truth. Jorge sighed, saying that they not only wanted the world to forget, but they also wanted to erase the truth from history itself. Maria Elena didn't want to believe this, but deep down, she knew her brother was not a man of unwarranted paranoia. The silence of the Vatican, the mysterious disappearance of the files, and the hasty elevation of the new pope all made her feel that something was amiss. She decided to speak out, not to oppose the church, but to protect a part of her brother, the part he had hidden for too long. Maria Elena revealed that in the next chapter, she would disclose what she knew about Cardinal Matteo Terresco, the new pope, and why she believed Jorge died with regret, knowing that the truth would once again be buried beneath the white smoke of the Sistine Chapel. Maria Elena questioned why anyone would want to bury the truth, especially now, when everything was slowly being revealed. She recalled Pope Francis's words, "The Vatican has never been a unified entity, but rather a deeply divided institution between those who genuinely seek reform and those who seek to preserve stability at all costs." Maria Elena understood that the latter group was not only concerned about their reputation, but also about the hidden power at the heart of the Church. The secrets of the Vatican, according to Maria Elena, were not merely forgotten stories, but truths that needed to be exposed for the world to understand the reality behind all the silence. As Pope Francis's health rapidly deteriorated in late 2023, Maria Elena noticed subtle but troubling changes. Jorge appeared less in public, interviews with independent journalists disappeared, and most importantly, he stopped using the phrase accountability. At first, Maria thought her brother was simply exhausted, but gradually, the truth began to unfold. Some of Jorge's closest advisors, those considered allies in his reform efforts, were suddenly reassigned or forced to resign with no official explanation. They were replaced by new faces, many of whom had strong ties to Cardinal Matteo Tedesco, the newly anointed pope. Maria Elena revealed that before his death, Jorge had intended to release a shocking apostolic letter calling for the opening of archives related to abuse cases throughout the Church's history. However, that letter was set aside just weeks before his passing. "That letter could have changed everything," Maria said. "But now it may never be made public." Maria Elena stated that the silence of the Vatican had pushed Jorge into a dilemma. The Vatican had strayed far from the reform ideals that Jorge had once supported. The new pope was not chosen for his faith, but for his willingness to remain silent. The very silence that Jorge had spent his life trying to break. One day, Maria Elena received an anonymous letter with just 3 sentences. "Be careful with what you say. Your brother died with honor. Don't give the world a reason to doubt that." The letter had no signature, no return address, but was heavy enough to silence most people. Maria Elena, though reluctant, knew that this letter might carry the truth that Pope Francis could never reveal. Maria Elena revealed that Jorge had left behind the most shocking collection of documents in modern church history. These documents were hidden deep within a humble wooden chest in Buenos Aires, containing the Pope's handwritten diaries, documenting his final 2 years. These diary pages were filled with raw reflections, coded notes, and mysterious references to numbers and events that had never been disclosed before. What mattered was not just who wrote them, but the fact that Jorge knew his time was running out. Maria Elena recalled that Jorge began writing these diaries after a major health crisis in 2023, when he nearly died during a hospital stay. In a tearful phone call, Jorge told his sister, "You don't know how long they'll let me speak freely. But my hands can still write. I'll write what my voice is no longer allowed to say." One of the first lines he wrote was, "The wolves are closing in. My silence is no longer peace, but fear disguised as obedience." In his diaries, Jorge recorded meetings with senior cardinals who pressured him to stop speaking out about the abuse cases in the Church's history. Rather than seeking justice, these individuals urged him to protect the unity of the Church. One entry in the diary particularly haunted Maria Elena, where Jorge wrote, "Protecting the institution by denying the truth is crucifying Christ once again. I have looked into the eyes of the victims. I have heard their stories. But I am asked to maintain diplomacy. I was not made Pope to protect secrets. I was made Pope to serve God." Jorge also left behind a record containing a list of priests and bishops accused of child abuse across dioceses in the U.S., Australia, and Europe. These documents revealed that powerful cardinals had spent millions of euros to buy silence and relocate victims, instead of holding them accountable. As Pope Francis's health declined, troubling changes began to emerge. Jorge stopped using the term accountability, and Maria Elena realized that everything was being gradually blocked, especially as some of his closest advisors were forced to resign without any official explanation. Maria Elena shared that Jorge had uncovered a vast financial corruption network within the Vatican, including payments to government officials in exchange for tax benefits and control over church assets. The most alarming revelation was an illegal deal involving the sale of an ancient monastery in Italy to a real estate corporation for $50 million, the proceeds of which were transferred to a secret account in Luxembourg. Francis had tried to reform the Vatican Bank, but all his efforts were met with strong resistance. Beyond financial issues, Francis also discovered that the Vatican had secretly funded political campaigns in countries with human rights violations to protect the interests of the Church. Maria Elena shared that Jorge began writing his diaries in his final years, following a major health crisis in 2023. In these diaries, Jorge recorded meetings with high-ranking cardinals who pressured him to stop speaking out about historical abuse cases. One entry that particularly haunted Maria Elena read, "Protecting the institution by denying the truth is crucifying Christ once again." Jorge also left behind a safe record, which included a list of priests and bishops accused of child abuse, along with documents revealing that powerful cardinals had spent millions of euros to buy silence and relocate victims. But what saddened Maria Elena the most was that these documents were never made public, and now she faces the decision of whether or not to share what her brother left behind. Maria Elena knew that the diaries Jorge left behind could contain truths that no one else dared to speak. She received numerous requests from the families of abuse survivors, pleading with her to publish the diaries, hoping that within them were the names of priests, bishops, and cardinals who had escaped justice. The diaries were not only historical documents, but also a beacon of hope for forgotten victims. Now, the question was not whether Pope Francis had been silenced, but whether his words could still hold power over the silence he was forced to endure. Maria Elena found herself not only standing at this difficult crossroads, but also feeling that her brother's legacy was not etched on a marble tombstone or displayed in the libraries of the Vatican. Jorge's legacy lay in his humble, quiet gestures. A gentle look, a simple act, a word for those who needed to be heard. That was the legacy Pope Francis left for each member of the family, and Maria Elena, who was the last to tell this story, now held it in her hands. When Pope Francis passed away, his birth name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, was called one last time. The church entered a sacred farewell staged with the precise light of the Vatican shining through the Sistine Chapel's dome. Cardinals in crimson robes lined up solemnly, and world leaders offered their condolences. But what moved people was not the rituals or the farewell words, but the simple and loving memories Maria Elena shared about her brother. She did not describe Jorge as a perfect saint, but as a man with flaws who always tried to do what was right in a world that demanded perfection. She said that her brother chose love, even when that love caused him pain. This was the legacy he left for the family. Not golden robes or the honor of the papacy, but love in simple, quiet actions. The legacy of Pope Francis is not just in his teachings of compassion, but also in his tangible actions. As an Argentine, he brought to the Vatican a perspective from the global South, where inequality and poverty are daily realities. His apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, condemned the economy of exclusion and the lethal machinery of unchecked capitalism, urging world leaders to prioritize the most vulnerable. He didn't stop at words. He acted with deep humanity, such as washing the feet of Muslims and Hindus on Holy Thursday. Francis was hailed as the Pope of the Poor, a man who not only preached compassion, but also lived according to those values. The legacy of Pope Francis also includes his strong commitment to environmental protection. His 2015 encyclical, Laudato Si, became the Church's first green document, calling for urgent action to combat climate change and protect our common home. This message was not only directed to Catholics, but also served as a call to all of humanity, highlighting the connection between social justice and environmental protection. Environmental activists like Greta Thunberg expressed respect for him, even though they did not share his faith. This legacy sparked ecological initiatives across Catholic parishes, from renewable energy programs to waste reduction campaigns. Although the legacy of Pope Francis includes bold and controversial steps, he made significant reforms within the Church. He fought against financial corruption in the Vatican Bank, firing officials involved in money laundering and hiring independent auditors. He also established the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors to address the sexual abuse scandals, publicly apologizing to the victims and implementing stricter policies to prevent such incidents in the future. The interfaith and peace-building legacy of Pope Francis is also profound. He expanded dialogue with other religions, meeting with leaders of Islam, Judaism, and Buddhism. A pivotal moment in his career came in 2019 when he visited the United Arab Emirates, marking a significant step in building bridges between religions and nations. Pope Francis, with his deep humility and compassion, left a legacy not only in his teachings or global peace campaigns, but also in his courageous actions. From signing the Abu Dhabi Declaration on Human Fraternity to his strong condemnation of wars, from Ukraine to the Middle East, Pope Francis called on world leaders to prioritize peace over politics. His visits to conflict zones like Iraq and South Sudan demonstrated his strong commitment to those suffering, further solidifying the Vatican's role as a global mediator. continuously striving to bring hope to unstable lands. Maria Elena, the sister of Pope Francis, never sought glory for her brother. She simply hoped that people would remember him as a humble man, not as a distant symbol, but as a person with flaws, wrong turns, and moments of grace. He always chose kindness, even when it came at a great cost. This is the legacy he left, not through golden robes or the grand ceremonies of the Vatican, but through small, compassionate gestures. Although Pope Francis has passed away, his story is far from over. Maria Elena, his only surviving sister, has broken her silence to share the secrets the Pope uncovered throughout his life. What she reveals is not about grand sermons or the glory of the Vatican, but the dark secrets he confronted. The discoveries of corruption and its consequences within the Catholic Church, things no one dared to speak of, are gradually being uncovered through the words of his sister. The story of Pope Francis continues to stir and captivate the curiosity of people worldwide. The dark secrets, sacrifices, and compassion he left behind not only impacted the Church, but also touched the hearts of millions across the globe. What do you think about this story? If you liked it, don't forget to hit the like button and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Support us by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in this mystery.